Good afternoon and welcome, Sheriff's Department, to the 2025 budget hearings. The format, if you haven't been watching, is we just turn it over to you. Based on your presentation, I think we can hold questions till the end. So you want to power through it, and then we'll open it up for questions from the group. Okay, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. First off, thank you for having us here today, and we have a presentation planned for you folks that may run maybe as much as 45 minutes, but we definitely want to leave time to have questions, and again, probably would help us if we hold all questions until we get through. First off, we also recognize that we're in the coveted right after lunch spot. So we've tried to add a little pizzazz to our presentation to keep you alert and awake, and anyway, but nothing tricky. So anyway, we'll get rolling right along here. We got quite a few presenters today. But first, I just always like to share our mission, vision, and values, and as a kind of a segue to what we're going to be talking about services in our organization. So moving on to us and who we are. Well, first, I'm John Giese, Kitsap County Sheriff, and we have our executive staff here with us that I'd like to introduce. Here is Melinda Phelps, our executive assistant, Wendy Dutenhofer, our financial manager, Russ Clithrow, our undersheriff, Penny Sapp, chief of corrections, Chad Birkenfeld, chief of patrol, Lisa Gundrum, chief of detectives and support services. So anyway, and we're all going to have speaking parts today. So. But first off, I guess I'd like to kick it off too by saying, you know, I do appreciate all your efforts being on this committee and trying to reconcile budget requests that exceed the money you have available to give. I know that's a tough duty, and we don't take it lightly. And I want you to know that in our sheriff's office, we don't take this budget process lightly at all. Not just this process, but the whole process of watching our budget, administrating our budget. We meet every week as the executive staff and go over our budget, find out where we're at, check year-to-date stats, how we're doing, try to address issues when we can before they become major issues. But having said that, we're just experiencing challenges like I've never seen before. I mean, it's just been extraordinary. So anyway, but I know this is tough. We're asked to come up with a budget that cuts $1.7 million. We think we did that. It's a very painful process for us to submit a budget that unfortunately pushes us backwards, not forwards, which was the direction we think we should move. But again, understanding the situation, we've tried to play by the rules and showed you what we've come up with. But you know, to be honest with you, I mean, when you talk about a $60 million budget, I would suspect citizens at home think, well, there's just loads of fat there. You could just trim a little fat here and there, and then all of a sudden you're at 1.7. Well, that's not true. And we've experienced this before. When we had the COVID downturn, we found out quickly when we had to take a 5 or 10% cut, how quickly that cut into positions. And we had to freeze 15 positions during that. Fortunately, we got them all back. But, you know, we've had this situation where, you know, when you look at our budget and how much we spend and what we spend it on, there's just that not very much room. So we did go through our budget line by line. We made cuts in almost every area we could. Where we didn't make cuts is in our overtime budget, and you're going to hear more about why we did that and how much pressure we experience right now on our overtime budget. But again, you know, we understand this is a tough process. But as we've experienced in years before too, when you cut budgets and it means stuff like deferring equipment, less training, etc., I mean, that just creates, unfortunately, a backlog that at some point you have to address. And you know, with the next year's budget forecast being even worse, this is a horrible situation. And I know all three of you walked into this situation in just the last year or two, but we've also seen it coming. And I worry about what kind of budget cuts and what kind of harm it'll do to our organization, the services we provide this year. I'm extraordinarily worried about what happens next year. So having said that, again, moving on here. So next slide, please. So a little bit about organization, and I guess just for reference for anybody who might be listening or our citizens. So the Sheriff's Office is responsible for providing primary law enforcement services to all of unincorporated Kitsap County, which comprises about 180,000 people. But when you look at all that area, what's unique about us is that, we have urban areas, Silverdale, East Bremerton. We have small city areas like Kingston. We have rural areas like Seebeck, Olalla. We have a broad array of communities that all have their own special needs and own special requests for us for services. And we try and balance that. But we're also a regional provider here in Kitsap County. So of the 180,000 people who live in unincorporated Kitsap County, a lot of times we find ourselves providing services to the whole county, which is about $280,000. Jail is a perfect example of that. We service all areas in the county with our jail. So, but up here we have basically the main divisions of our agency. Our administrative division is relatively small. It's the sheriff, undersheriff, the executive assistant, the financial manager, our payroll people, and then our PIO. But patrol is the lion's share of our operations out in the field. They have all the control over specialized units like Marine Patrol, traffic, SWAT. They are one of our biggest divisions. Corrections is our probably, if not second biggest division, almost equal to patrol. But they basically run our jail, which could house up to 450, 500 people if we had full staff to do that. They also take care of our court security program. And then we have detectives and support services, which, as it sounds like, runs our general detective unit, but then they're also responsible for our records unit, our civil process unit, and a couple of other things. So that's the way it's kind of broken down. OPS is our Office of Professional Standards. It falls under the Division of Detectives and Support Services. Our OPS unit is responsible for background investigations, training, internal affairs, processing, use of force reports, pursuits, stuff like that. And then they also help coordinate training. So it's a small but important unit within our one division. So although you'll hear a lot about our challenges here in the next few minutes, I do want to say we're doing extraordinary things, and we do have accomplishments that we're very proud of. There's been a lot of things going on in the last few years, and our people are, bar none, the highest and quality people that we have, and they just do amazing things. But we are doing constant things, and a lot of these things that you see up there, they've come from your support, either financially or, supportive as far as what we're trying to do. You see things like, the new firearms transition, as you know, an unexpected cost that all of a sudden popped up, about $300,000, $400,000, required for us to adapt a new weapon system quickly and train everybody on how to use it. Just a lot of different things going on. Some of these are capital improvements. Some of these are operational improvements. One thing that we're very proud of is our outreach programs. It says up there we've done 77 different community events. My guess is we've probably done way more than that. And our reach out to the community has been very strong. That's one of the things that's considered best practices, and under the Obama 20th century policing guidance, it says is important for agencies to do is make those connections and reach out to our community. But what's not up there, and what strikes me, is every day our people are coming in doing great work. Our corrections officers are coming into a facility that's, as we've discussed before, 80% of the population coming in is addicted to drugs. We have people with severe mental illness. We have people with serious medical conditions. They're coming into an environment, into our jail, where we're responsible for them and their health and their care. And we're doing that with short shifts and people working extra overtime trying to cover shifts that are going short. But, it's amazing work. It's amazing teamwork. It's the same thing with patrol. Our patrol group now is short. They're out there. We set minimum staffing standards for corrections and jail and patrol, and we're not meeting them many times these days. People are working out there with fewer deputies than they should be. People are working corrections with fewer corrections officers than should be. But our people are doing amazing work. They're working with teamwork and integrity and professionalism and getting those things done. So we are doing good things, and I think that, as much as we're trying hard to meet the level of service that our community expects, we may not be able to do that given current staffing issues and other challenges, But I think the services we do provide are still top-notch, and the feedback I hear from the community is always good. And I appreciate, and I'm proud to be part of this organization and the work that our folks do. So challenges, I think you're going to hear a lot about challenges today, and you're going to hear a lot of the same themes over and over and over again. You know, when if you've heard me talk to any of the Rotary groups at the community groups, there's three main areas I'd like to talk about because there's certainly big drivers to what our business is all about and some of the challenges we have. The three main drivers I see are staffing, police reform, and then crime. And, you know, staffing is the number one concern for us, and it has been for about 4 or 5 years now. We knew a number of years ago that there was going to be a wave of employees that were going to reach that 30, 35-year mark, that were reaching the time to retire. And that happened. It happened in the last few years. And so we did see a tremendous amount of people retiring. But we've also seen, though, in the last few years, is people who are not going that 35 years or 30 years, they're going at 20 years because they can go and they can retire, they can take their pension, and they can get out of a business that's very turbulent right now. So we're seeing not only the people retiring long-term that we've expected, but we're seeing people leaving the profession, you know, in a shorter period of time. We've also experienced here recently some situations where, you know, people who have tried this job have decided they don't like it, and we're seeing probably more of that these days. We've also, you know, been a destination agency, which I've been extraordinarily proud of, but we've lost folks to some other agencies here recently. And right now, the competitive environment out there is you can go to King County and get a $50,000 signing bonus. I mean, there's some extraordinarily challenging issues out there right now with people competing for law enforcement. So, and you're going to hear more about staffing and more about you know, the challenges we face and the training we have to do, because with every staffing turnover, we have to train a new deputy. We have to get them experienced as a deputy, get them up to speed, which can take a year and a half. But then what we're also seeing is people who are leaving with all the other responsibilities and training they have, the SWAT operators, the Marine people, the traffic people, the search and rescue people. All that stuff is being replaced and all requiring training, all putting pressure on us. Crime, I just want to mention crime just briefly. So crime is one of those things that you will hear people say, yes, crime is up, no, crime is down. There's always argument. It's a political football that always gets punted back and forth. And right now what you're hearing is crime is down. Good news. It's more complicated than that. And it's also local. So what you are seeing is, you know, and this is something I also explained to the community, 2017, 2018, we saw crime starting to increase. COVID came and crime took a holiday. It was great. You know, but after what we saw in 23, 24 was crime increased dramatically, violent crime increased dramatically. So the good news is some crime is down, and what kind of crime is down is like motor vehicle theft, which almost doubled in a 2-year period, has dropped dramatically, but it's still at a historic high rate. Burglaries are down, which is good news. But what's up is violent crime. You know, we are seeing more assault 1, assault 2 charges, which are violent crimes, usually with injuries. We're seeing more people armed with weapons. We're making much more weapons violation arrests, which are felons, usually felons in possession of handguns. So we are still dealing with a very volatile environment out there. Domestic violence crime is still high too. So there's still some work to do. So please don't be swayed when you hear on the news, you know, Seattle saw a 30% reduction in violent crime. Well, that's great for them, but that's not true for everywhere. So facilities, commissioners, I know you've been through this journey with us before. You know, we've had sewage leaks in our main office, you know, coming from the jail down into our detectives area. We've had to rehab, I mean, all of our building down there in detectives. We're still trying to deal with facilities issues. It's not a great environment. Our Silverdale office is, it was built in 1994 as a temporary situation, and it's pretty much outdated, too small for our purposes. And unfortunately, we don't have any plan to replace those buildings, but facilities being older and need a repair, they're still a burden on us. They still require us to have investment in fixing those things. Cost of doing business, I'm sure you've heard it through all your presentations. I know you understand it. The cost of everything has gone up. You know, when you run a facility like a jail, of course, cost of medical has gone up everywhere. Well, it's gone up even dramatically more in the jail. Food service, which is something we have to provide, has gone up. Everything's gone up. The cost of our wages have gone up. You know, and I appreciate, you know, the commissioners, you and others before you, have been generous with contracts and trying to keep us at a competitive pay. But that cost has escalated, and that means, our cost for salaries has gone up, but also our cost of overtime's gone up pretty dramatically just based on that the last couple of years. So, I mean, we understand that we're an expensive chunk of our county budget, 45%. We understand that where we go, we drag everybody with us sometimes, and, we're cognizant of that, but it is something that we're facing. And, technology has become a bigger and bigger piece of our business. And it's kind of one of those deals, if you don't have the technology and something happens, the question is, well, why don't you have it? Body cameras, you just helped us purchase body cameras just a year or so ago, which was something that, we had been late adopters, but that was like a $5 million investment over 5 years that you afforded us. But it's a best practice. It's something we need. It's something that if we didn't have and there was something happen, people would say, well, why don't you? What's wrong with you folks? But as soon as you invest in technology, what we find is, a drone is the perfect example. You can buy a drone today, it works great, and 5 years from now, it's totally obsolete, and you have to buy a new one. So we're faced with more and more of the issues with technology. It's become a bigger part of our budget. Police reform. So after 2020, George Floyd, Washington State was probably one of the most aggressive in the country as far as enacting police and criminal justice reform. 13 major bills passed, dramatically changed everything we do in our business. Whether it's hiring, firing, discipline, tracking use of force, tracking other, complaints and issues with officers and deputies. It changed how we respond to patrol. It changes the use of force, changed pursuits dramatically, and continues to change pursuits over the last few years. Has a dramatic impact on our business. But one of the things we're seeing when it comes to budget is, some of the things we've learned is there's been mandated training. And we've always been an organizational profession that requires a lot of training, but now we have much more mandatory training, which is a cost. And when you take the cost of a deputy who, whatever, hourly pay of like $50, $60 an hour, multiply that by 100, which is about how many deputies we have, just 1 hour of training becomes a substantial investment for us. So the more training that's required mandatorily, the more impact it has on our budget. But then also we have all these new people we're trying to train, and all these new people who become SWAT operators and search and rescue operators. We're trying to train them too, so the cost has gotten huge. One of the things that came about with police reform is how you respond to calls. Slow things down, bring in more resources, take your time. Well, that's kind of counter to the historical way we've done things. Is like, the idea is like, let's get things done, let's get it wrapped up, let's get on to the next call. Now that's not the way you were supposed to handle things. And so it all takes time, and it all is investment in money. So a lot of the things that's come about with police reform, tracking use of force, tracking different things, all has required more investment in time and more investment in things. So it has had a big expectation on us. The last thing that's up on that slide, public expectations. And I know the commissioners, you've heard me say it. I worry, my number one worry right now is our county is growing. And for my first 30 years, I've said that our county is growing, but it's like, well, growing a little bit. But now I see housing developments and apartments going up everywhere. There's more cars on our road. It's hard not to see the growth in our county. And we're already experiencing, and traffic enforcement is one of the ones I know is near and dear to your heart because you hear it all the time. Why isn't there more traffic enforcement? There's more cars speeding. There's more cars, period. We are just struggling to keep up with the pace of growth. And what's so different about this downturn in our budget compared to other times is, when COVID struck, people understood, hey, there's a big national emergency here. We have to cut our budgets. We have to get ready for pending, doom, I guess. So, at least we understood that. 2008, when we had the Great Recession, everybody had to cut. We understood that. Things were going backwards in our whole country. What's different is we got a budget restriction here that's not tied to a downturn in the economy. We got a budget restriction that's tied to just our issues with funding basic county government. And so, we're going backwards when our county's going forwards. And that's what the struggle is, and that's what worries me the most. And, but like I said, we understand that we're facing a county budget shortfall. We understand we're 45% of the budget. We understand that if you did across-the-board cuts and it would look proportional to what your budget size is, that would be 1.7 for us, and so we've done that. And I'm going to turn this over to Wendy in just a second. She's going to explain how we tried to get to that number. But as you hear the rest of us talk and present, I think you'll get a good flavor for what we're facing and what our challenges. And it worries me that we're potentially going backwards when we should be going forwards, or at least trying to hold steady. And again, I'm willing to work with you, but I hope that, after our presentation that, we'll maybe be on the same page. This is bad if we have to cut officers and deputies in our position. It's worse if we have to even deal with it more next year. There's structural fixes, and I think that we have to address those. We have to be committed to do that. If nothing else, not for me, for them. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Wendy here, and she'll tell you how we got to where we got.
Thank you, Sheriff. You see the slide above there, and I just want to talk to that briefly. If you look on the right-hand side and you look at those numbers, we are aware those total up to $1.8 million, and then the total budget reduction of $1.6 million. And I will circle back to that. But at first, if you will bear with me, I would like to review our process that we went through for creating this budget. We received the budget call letter in July, and we were tasked to reduce our spending by $1,741,976. Additionally, we were tasked to absorb any contract increases, save jail medical and Kitsap 911. That's an additional $272,000. So theoretically, we were tasked to cut from our budget over $2 million. On our first review, first I'd like to review our current budget. So we have 9 general fund programs, and we have 6 special revenue programs. And I know that most of you are aware of this, but I appreciate you humoring me going through this process. For our 2025 approved general fund budget of $58 million, sounds like a lot of money. But $40 million, or roughly 70% of that, is payroll and benefits. 6.9% is for intergovernmental services and shared services. That leaves $11 million for the Sheriff's Office operating costs, inclusive of patrol, jail, detectives, Office of Professional Standards. When you remove from that $11 million all of our obligated contracts and services, utilities, that leaves us approximately $1 million to operate the Sheriff's Office and the jail. With $1 million left for our operating expenses, you can see that that is impossible to cut $1.7 million or $2 million from our budget without impacting personnel. So the process we went through to try and reach the required target of $1.7 million in reductions, we went through every single line item of every single program, and we looked at every detail of those line items and looked at which areas that we could cut. Of our operating expenses, we identified $122,000 that we could remove from operating expenses. Removal of some software programs, some training money was removed. There were various other things for equipment that were removed to come up with that $122,000. We also, from a grant received through Chief Sapp, who will speak to that, $400,000 that we used to come up with the total reductions. But please understand that that $400,000 is from grant funding, which is technically a one-time source of funds. And even though there is a possibility that the grant will be renewed, it is right now a one-time source of funds. So when that money is gone, or if that grant is not removed, then we are backwards $400,000. Additionally, from that grant, we reallocated 2 corrections officers' positions, and again, one-time sources of funds to balance our budget and meet the cut requests. We reallocated some positions that came up to approximately $75,000. So when we had positions that left, We reorganized and saved approximately $75,000 from that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we had no choice to meet these target cuts to remove 3 patrol commissioned positions and 3 corrections officers positions. So that's a total of 5 positions if you take the positions that were moved from regular general fund to grant funding. So that brings us to $1.6 million that we identified as far as cuts. We additionally proposed a potential increase in bed rental rates for the jail to help offset jail medical costs. This could potentially add $347,000 in revenue. With the decreased costs and potential increased revenue, we identified approximately $1.9 million. However, we did not comply with the request for absorbing contract increases. These are legal contracts. These amounts are obligated, and they total approximately $294,000. We requested that we have the status quo for our contracts. These contracts were signed, some of them years ago, and we have the obligation to fulfill those. If we were to continue reductions, that would mean an additional reduction of staffing. So right now, we've already reduced 3 commission positions, 3 corrections positions, and reallocated 2 additional corrections positions. So to meet our contract obligations, we would again have to reduce staffing, which we were not willing to do at this point. We did not reduce overtime. That's been a question that's asked of us over and over about reducing overtime. We did not reduce overtime because it's already underfunded. And with these cuts in positions, our overtime is going to increase. It will not decrease. So we will also have, when contracts are settled, that will increase the payroll and benefits budget, which will also increase the overtime. So we're really in a catch-22 position when it comes to overtime. We hear a lot, and we have had a lot of conversations about overtime, but the true reality is, in order to provide services to this county, that we will have to have overtime to cover the shift and the losses of positions. If you look at the slide up there and you take in all of these amounts, and I know I've thrown a lot of numbers at you, and everybody loves numbers. They're so riveting and exciting. But that's how we get to the total budget reduction of $1.6 million as calculated by the budget office. Next year, with even more anticipated cuts, which means further reductions in staffing and services, and the chiefs are going to speak a little more on that, but the repercussions of reducing Kitsap County Sheriff's Office staffing will ultimately impact the citizens of Kitsap County. This county must look at additional sources of revenue and other options for reallocation of funds to meet the obligation and provide Kitsap County residents public safety services. I've also been asked to address a couple of items that were not included in the budget packet. In addition to our budget submission, there's 2 other items. The jail camera upgrade system. The county invested over $2 million in that camera system, and it was paid through the jail juvie fund. Those funds came from the jail juvie fund. We respectfully request spending authority for the annual maintenance contract be funded through an increased distribution of sales tax revenues from the jail juvie fund. For year 1, that equals $71,700. Year 2, $75,285. Year 3, $79,049, for a total fiscal impact of $226.35 for 3 years. In addition, we requested positions through the mental health sales tax grant, and those positions were not completely funded. We did not have this information at the time we submitted our budget request. Our grant application requested $417,614 to cover our reentry programs, our coordinators, and our crisis intervention deputy. Grant funding was awarded again after the budget submission in the amount of $300,000, so a deficit of $117,000. In 2025, the Board of Commissioners was kind enough to agree to cover the difference between the grant funding and the actual expenses that was awarded. We are respectfully requesting the same consideration for 2026 so that the re-entry program may continue and that we can continue to have a deputy dedicated to crisis intervention. And now I will turn it over to Under Sheriff Cliff Rowe.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Budget Committee. Thank you for your time today. As the command staff of the Sheriff's Office, we are committed to operating our agency as efficiently and effectively as possible. To support this commitment, we continuously update our strategic plan, ensuring it aligns with and advances our agency's mission and vision. As I said last year during this presentation, our mission, vision, and strategic plan are closely aligned with those of the Board of Commissioners' vision. Together, we are united in our efforts to foster a safe, healthy, and vibrant community. Through public safety services and ongoing community outreach, we work to build an engaged and connected community. The Sheriff's Office plays a critical role in advancing the Board's vision of a livable, resilient, and well-governed Kitsap County. We take great pride in our professionalism and dedication to these shared goals. We also want to express our appreciation for the Board's decision back in June when you implemented the hiring freeze to exempt deputy sheriffs and corrections officers. However, in reality, these positions are not exempt from the budget cuts. We've been tasked with cutting $1.7 million from an already stretched budget. Unfortunately, the only feasible way to meet this target is by eliminating 3 deputy positions and 3 corrections officers. If these cuts move forward, the impacts will be immediate and far-reaching. The loss in staffing will affect critical services, and as we know from experience, the last time we did this years ago, it will take years to recover from. These cuts will also significantly hinder our ability to support the Board's mission and vision of an engaged and connected community. Due to the budget cuts, we will no longer be able to send deputies to many of the community events we regularly attend throughout the year. These events are vital opportunities for us to engage directly with the residents of Kitsap County, to hear their concerns, build trust, and assess how well we are serving the community. Limiting this engagement weakens the essential connection between the Sheriff's Office and the citizens. A safe community. Cutting deputies and corrections officers' positions directly impacts our ability to keep our community safe. Our agency is already operating with dangerously low staffing levels. Further reductions will push us toward a purely reactive model of policing, responding to crimes after they occur, rather than the preferred approach of proactive patrols and that help prevent crime in the first place. Reductions will also lead to the implementation of booking restrictions at the jail and the closing down of one of the jail pods, further compromising public safety. Your vision of a healthy, livable, resilient, and vibrant community. Public safety is the foundation of a thriving community. When people don't feel safe, they are less likely to attend community events, invest in local businesses, or choose Kitsap County as a place to live and raise a family. Over time, this perception can lead to people moving away, businesses closing, and property values declining. The long-term cost of underfunding public safety extends far beyond the Sheriff's Office. It affects the vitality of our entire county. And finally, your vision of a well-governed community. One of the core responsibilities of county government is ensuring public safety, including the Sheriff's Office, the jail, and the prosecutor's office. The people of Kitsap County deserve to live without fear of crime or violence. A well-governed community commits to adequately funding and staffing public safety to protect its residents, support its justice system, and foster a strong, secure future for all. So as you can see on the slide up there, our agency continues to experience unprecedented employee turnover, resulting in the loss of hundreds of years of combined experience across both commission and correctional staff. Since 2022, we have welcomed 111 new employees to the agency, including 44 deputies, 38 corrections officers, and 19 support service personnel. So far this year alone, we have onboarded 22 additional staff members. The patrol division is designed to run on a minimum of 62 deputies. This year, we started with 65 available deputies on patrol. As of today, we have 53 deputies. And we are projecting in January of 2026, we will start the year with 55 deputies. This number is assuming we don't lose anyone else between now and then. Even with this assumption, we are still be 10 deputies short of last January. A traditional benchmark for law enforcement staffing is the number of officers per 1,000 residents. According to the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, our current staffing level is at 0.067 per 1,000 residents, the 8th lowest among sheriff's offices in Washington state. And as you've heard, and it's been well publicized, Washington ranks 50th among all U.S. states with an average of 1.12 officers per 1,000 residents. As you can see, we would have to nearly double our current staffing just to reach the state average. The sheriff's office is more than just patrol deputies you see on the road. The Kitsap County Jail is a large and very critical component of our operations. It's a regional facility, and it has the responsibility to ensure a safe and secure and constitutionally compliant environment for everyone in our custody. High levels of mandatory overtime at the jail are also taking a toll on the corrections staff, leading to employee fatigue and burnout. In 2007, we had 123 commissioned deputies and 94 corrections officers. Today, despite population growth and increasing service demands, these numbers are essentially unchanged. And we're one lower deputy with 122, and we have gained 3 corrections officers. Over that same time period, the population of the county has grown approximately 15.2%. With new housing developments and apartment complexes continuing to rise throughout the county, we are seeing a corresponding increase in population, calls for service, and unfortunately, crisis requiring law enforcement intervention. Next. Training. With all this employee turnover, we are experiencing a correlated rate of turnover in our specialized units, such as detectives, traffic, SWAT, Marine Patrol, field training, search and rescue. These roles demand extensive specialized training well beyond the basic academy. We are also constantly recruiting and training new personnel to serve as instructors for our in-house programs such as firearms, defensive tactics, emergency vehicle operations, patrol tactics, and much more. Compounding this challenge are the numerous hours of unfunded state-mandated training required. This was introduced through the police reform legislation. As you can see from the slide, the number of hours of mandated training has risen significantly over the years. It is going to continue to rise, and at the beginning of next year, corrections officers in Washington state are going to be required to complete 24 hours of unfunded mandatory training. Due to our ongoing staffing crisis, the majority of this mandatory training must be conducted on overtime, placing additional strain on our already limited resources. One of the most significant impacts of police reform has been the increased complexity and duration of calls for service. These incidents now require more deputies on scene. They take considerably longer to resolve, further increasing our operational workload and stretching available resources. Currently, our Sheriff's Office operates in a primarily reactive mode, responding to and reporting on crimes after they occur. As I mentioned before, the preferred approach is to be proactive, working to prevent crimes before they happen. However, this can only be achieved with adequate staffing and funding. Crime is driven by many complex factors. While some areas have been seen recent improvements, overall crime remains at a 10-year high. For example, although vehicle thefts have decreased from last year's peak, the numbers are still alarmingly high if you look at the the history going back there of the vehicle thefts. They're, even without the increase the last couple of years, they would still be at a high. The slide shows a decrease in assaults. However, this is largely due to a change in how CPS and APS referrals are now coded in the system. In previous years, these referrals were included in the assault totals, but they are no longer counted in that category. The reality is that assaults are still on the rise, and weapon violations remain a serious and growing concern. In fact, as the sheriff mentioned, we are seeing more weapons-related offenses than ever before, particularly involving juveniles. Today's law enforcement environment is more complex and challenging than ever, shaped by recent legislative mandates, expanded training requirements, rising crime rates, and societal issues such as mental health crisis, the opiate addiction, and homelessness. An understaffed sheriff's office can significantly compromise public safety and the overall effectiveness of law enforcement in the community. With too few deputies to handle the volume of calls, response times to emergencies and non-emergencies incidents often increase, leaving residents vulnerable during critical situations. Overworked staff may experience burnout, stress, and fatigue, which can lead to mistakes, reduce morale, and even higher turnover, further worsening the staffing issue. Investigations may be delayed, proactive policing efforts are often deprioritized, and community outreach or crime prevention programs can be suspended altogether. Ultimately, an understaffed sheriff's office not only strains existing personnel, but also erodes public trust in the community's sense of security. Eliminating these 3 deputy positions and 3 corrections officers will only worsen our staffing crisis and significantly impair our ability to combat crime effectively. Before I hand it over to the division chiefs, I'll leave you with one final note. Public safety is a core responsibility of government, and no community can truly thrive without it. The citizens of Kitsap County deserve to feel safe where they live and work, and a strong, well-resourced police presence is essential to ensuring that sense of security. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Sapp.
Wipe your germs off of it. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Penny Sapp, and I'm the Chief of Corrections for the Kitsap County Sheriff's Office Jail. Before I start my detailed speech here, I want to touch on a few things that Wendy brought up. The Medicaid waiver, the grant money. That is a 3-year contract. We're in the first year right now, so we have 2 more years. So the funding for like the electronic health records will also go into 2027. We'll be able to use $400,000 from that, and then I am sure we'll be able to fund the 2 officer positions that year as well. What we don't know, and we're still in the process of billing, is the revenue we'll generate, and I'm always optimistic when we talk about that. And the camera service agreement. I can't emphasize enough how important that is. We invested $2.5 million into that camera upgrade, and it's really essential that we have a service agreement so that our camera system stays above par. That is such a huge liability. Having that camera system and being able to play back when we have a critical incident or a use of force is really important. And we're lucky that Cornerstone has an employee living in Washington State, so actually the cost is down. So I just want to throw that out there. But now I'll get on to what I have to talk about, which is the jail. You asked us to decrease our budget by $1.7 million, and we did it, but it's going to come with an impact. I recognize that we're $8 million deficit for the budget for the county, and that's horrible, and I know that you're working hard to make difficult decisions. I also recognize that there's an increase in costs, and I'm going to be vulnerable here for a minute and talk about jail medical. I can't sit in a meeting without hearing the increase of jail medical. And sometimes that feels personal. I take it personal. It almost feels like a stab in the heart. It's not my fault. It's not something Penny Sapp can fix. It's not something that you all can fix. This is a statewide problem, and it's something that we all need to address in the state of Washington. But I am grateful that EverHealth has decided to stay with Kitsap County Jail, because without them, we would not have somebody to provide the individuals that are incarcerated in our facility with medical care. So just throwing that out there. Now I'm going to go back. I've been here 23 years, and I'm not going to forget, I didn't remember the date, someone had to help me with that, but Thanksgiving weekend 2009, it was the Monday right after Thanksgiving. I sat in a room with several officers and their spouses and Chief Newland at the time, and we had to deliver a message to them that they were all going to lose their jobs. And it was a very emotional time. We got through it. In fact, one of those individuals that got laid off is sitting behind me, Sergeant Page. He didn't get laid off once, but twice. He's probably the only county employee that's been hired 3 times for the same position, but he's here and we're grateful. But we've been through some rough times, and corrections has always endured that, and we did so without wavering. But I want to talk about mandatory overtime. We are well aware that we are blowing our budget up, but it's not by choice. The officers are not actively seeking overtime. In fact, they're getting forced to stay. We're begging people to stay. We can't eliminate staffing positions. We have housing units that have to have an officer there to supervise the individuals that are in our facility. There's no getting around it. In August, we had over 1,900 hours of overtime that was logged, and the majority of that, 1,700, was for operations. On an average day, we have 4 officers out on either protected leave or sick leave every day. Now, some of those days in the month of August, there was 2, but there was other days that it was up to 9, 8. So it's pretty significant. That's an entire station. If you see what I'm saying, it takes 8 officers to cover a 24/7. So 4 officers are off every day. I want to talk about burnout, because that's what's happening right now. Our corrections officers are working long hours, and let's face it, it's a really negative environment. Nobody wants to be in there. It's a concrete building, no windows. People are yelling at you, threatening to kill your family, and you have to endure that for 10, 12, 13, 14 hours. You're unable to take days off because we just don't have the ability to give you annual leave at this point. I don't want to throw something out there. You all like to go on ride-alongs. I would really encourage you, commissioners, to maybe do a shift in the jail and see what it's like to be a corrections officer, because it's not easy. It takes a special person to want to work this profession, and these are good individuals that deserve the respect that I'm asking for, and maybe it benefit you sitting to see what it's like. So with these staffing positions getting decreased, and not to mention the 4 positions that were usually down, we're looking at implementing intake standards again. We can't continue to book and hold on everybody in the county and maintain a good working environment. In doing so, if we implement the intake standards, that will allow us to lower the population dramatically so that we can close an entire housing unit and decrease our staffing levels by 1 per shift. That's the only way right now in the current state that we're in that we'll get by. Eliminating these 3 more corrections officers, we'll have to do that. And this is not going to be short-term. It's going to be long-term, because until we can get more staff, that is the only thing we can do. In 2009, we had about the same amount of officers, but the individuals in our jail are a lot more violent, they're a lot more sick, and they take a lot more time. So the workload hasn't changed. It's actually gotten a lot more difficult. We need our officers to be on point, and we need them to be fresh, and we need them to be able to do their job. This will have a ripple effect if we do implement these standards and close that pod. We'll only be booking and holding on felonies and PC, DVs, and DUIs. The amount of warrants on file will increase dramatically, not just here at the district court, but also for the municipalities. This will impact the workload for the courts as well. They'll be issuing warrants and following up. And it's going to cause a really big issue with community safety, because we won't be holding the individuals that probably need to stay in custody. We cannot continue to deliver the services that our community expects, given the staffing issues and the further reduction in officer positions. So now we're going to do something a little bit outside of the box. You're not just going to listen to us, you're going to listen to a few of our staff members. So I'm going to ask Sergeant Joseph Page to come up and speak for a few minutes.
Good afternoon. I'm Sergeant Page. I work in Corrections Division as the 3rd Watch Operational Supervisor. I also have additional tasks with running the schedule and trying to figure that whole thing out, which is an absolute nightmare. In the month of August, 31 days, we had over 188 overtime posts. Now, when I say 188 overtime posts, that's just what the officers see. Most of those posts that we send out to officers have multiple officers needed to cover that time. The actual amount of shifts that we needed covered were 469 shifts that needed to be covered in the month of August. During that time frame, we only had 992 hours of that covered, which means we had over 200 hours of just not enough staff. Part of those reasons is because we didn't have the people that we mandatory people to make them work overtime. And when you run out of people and nobody wants to come in, we just run short. Trying to manage that is in a safe manner to make sure everybody goes home safe is not fun. We run a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week facility. We consistently have 1 to 2 overtime spots a day during that entire time frame. I'm sorry I don't have the actual mandatory overtime numbers for you. We don't track that in the schedule-wise. Some of that is done by payroll, at least that's made, but unless the officers put that into their workday, it's not tracked. So I'm sorry I don't actually have that information for you. I do know that at the beginning of this year, we granted as many people block leave as we could. I can assure you that after that time was done, there was no time to take leave that we could grant an entire shift. That is projected into 2026. As of right now, even with closing down a pod, it will be a hard press to get anybody time off next year currently. And that is not something that I would like to see happen because, as I said, burnout's a thing. I've been there myself. And I want to impress that there are a lot of things that we do have to cover. We have to cover courts. We have court officers that are assigned to do that. We have 11 specialty positions that are required that we take care of. We have a classifications team. All of the information that I have is merely for operating the jail. Of the 1,700 hours of overtime, that is all stuff that is absolutely necessary to function inside the jail safely. That's most of what I have. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Page. Officer Norenberg?
Thank you, Chief Sapp and Sheriff Giese and the council for allowing us to come up and speak for a little while and just paint a picture of what we're dealing with in the jail. Sergeant Page just did a fantastic job giving great numbers and just relaying the idea that we're running short. And even if things don't change at all in the number of positions that we're looking at, we're still seeing mandatory at a rate where we're having to tell our families, hey, we're not coming home on time. I know we have plans. I know we have plane tickets later, but guess what? I'm staying. Our sergeants do a great job trying to shuffle the schedule, but what you're not seeing within these numbers is the sheer dynamic and massive effort they have made to try to run with as few as possible. Sergeant Page himself has run a position and allowed me to go home a little earlier than when I was supposed to be mandatoried for the full time. I have relieved Chief Sapp, who worked from 3 a.m. until I came in, so that she didn't have to hold on, or we didn't have to hold on to an officer, or there was just simply wasn't somebody available. There are times where we've had 2 or 3 lieutenants working the floor with the chief to try to cover. Like, I believe it was one of those days in August, actually, that Sergeant Page mentioned we were down like 9. We're dealing with scenarios that it's hard to kind of, when you're just looking at numbers, relay the very situation that we're in. But we have folks that are working specialty positions that are also covering operations positions, and we're still running short sometimes. The difficulty of taking time off that Sergeant Page just mentioned, is creating a lot of burnout and resentment from our officers, which then brings up another issue is if you're getting mandatoried and you can't take time off, now you're starting to get pressure from home. So you're starting to see spouses, kids, other family members having important events, and you're like, I'm sorry, I can't get the time off. I can't do these events. And even with our sergeants working very hard trying to make sure these important events happen to honor not only just as an employee, but as their coworkers and friends, trying to help them have a successful home life is very, very difficult. I know that in the next year or two, if this trend continues, we already have staff talking about just being done, regardless of where they're at in their time. And even today, in fact, we actually have somebody working their last day. And I know already before I came over here for the meeting, they had just called out, and I was told by a new officer, 3 people just got mandatoried. So this continual trend of mandatory, limited or no time off, is putting a lot of pressure on our officers. And also when it comes to safety in the jail, sometimes we're running short, like I said, where we have 4 pods, one of them being a intake unit, could have 20, 30, 40 people, and the other units all having up 40 or more, and you have 2 officers running central pod that are working with mental health, that are working with our medical to provide those essential and really care that is what we should be doing for our folks, providing them top-level medical care and mental health, as well as continued resources outside the jail. It's getting hard to provide those things safely and adequately to the amount of attention to detail that really is needed, especially with a population that requires more leading than typically a standard individual out in the community would need. These are folks that don't function well with often basic needs like jobs or providing themselves medical care or having a roof over their head. So we're having to do more leading of these individuals, and we're trying programs that are getting them to treatment, getting them the medical insurance they need, getting them that continued care once they leave the jail. But unfortunately, something is going to have to give in the near future if we don't have the staff in order to adequately provide care. We want to do more than just check a box. We want to provide service, and we want to provide it in a professional way and doing the right thing. It becomes very difficult when our staff are burnt out. There's not enough of us to even adequately complete a job, and that's not even counting if we have other things come up, like if we have several transports due to medical need, we have to go to the hospital. Now we're having to pull officers from the floor. We don't have folks dedicated to that. They have to come from somewhere, whether that's a specialty position or whether that's somebody on the floor, and you're staying until you're relieved in that spot. So these become a revolving issue you see day in and day out that really leads to a lot of burnout from our officers. And again, I can't say enough about our lieutenants, our sergeants, Chief Sapp, coming in, working for us on the floor, trying to help, which just sets their agenda back further. As you can tell, it's just a kind of revolving thing. But my concern, being an officer as well as an instructor, I'm a defensive tactics instructor and a field training officer, as I'm working with our new people, as I'm working with our folks on the floor and continuing to provide training and do all the things that we have to do, I'm hearing more and more just how tired our staff are. And the booking also is incredibly busy. And that's becoming something where we need more people to adequately book people in and provide the services needed. Our brothers and sisters out on the road, they're tired and they're working hard. And sometimes we're just trying to get them in and get them out so they can go back out and continue on to the next call. So I just think that the more that we're looking at holding even just a status quo, it's going to be harder to meet the demands that are moving forward. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Officer Nordenberg. I hope that kind of paints a picture from the officer and sergeant's perspective. I have some really good corrections officers who deserve nothing but the utmost respect. Not a lot of people wake up and say, hey, I want to be a corrections officer, or grow up and say they want to be one. It takes, like I said, a special kind of person. And I want to keep these people. So retention is important to me. And that concludes my section, and now I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Chief Bergenfeld.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Budget Committee. I'm going to really speak fast so I can give some people some time, so bear with me. As you can see the slide up there, I'll just touch a few things and then go into what I wanted to talk about. So A couple things, aging equipment technology, we've all been preaching that. Just to throw something out for an example is currently we're changing radio systems. That's going to be part of the FIFA issue. That also comes with SWAT operators of a cost of about $90,000 to replace those to keep them safe. Inability to target specific issues. Traffic complaints, as the undersheriff talked about, is one of those, and narcotics complaints. We have 5 people in traffic currently working with the traffic sergeant, being new as the chief in patrol. We needed an investigator, somebody that can go out and handle these vehicular homicides, vehicular assaults. And one last thing is the cost increase for CJTC. We're now going to $10,000 per student that we send over there for the academy. That's brand new. So that's an unexpected cost that we're going to have to come up with. What I really wanted to touch on was 4 things. First being increased risk during calls. Delayed backup with fewer deputies available is an issue. Backup may arrive slower or not at all. This leaves the deputies out there in dangerous situations and also leaving citizens with lengthy response times. That also can lead to fatigue-related errors. Long shifts and backfill overtime can increase mistakes. Not that it does, but it can. And that's a liability not only to the county, but to this agency and the individual deputies. Mental and physical fatigue, burnout and stress, that's been a topic today. Fewer staff means higher call volume per deputy, leading to chronic stress, anxiety, and reduced resilience in critical incidents. That's a concern for safety. Physical strain. All our officers are working longer hours, less rest, and have increased risk. That's on commission and non-commission side. And then compromised situational awareness. Fatigue lowers alertness, making deputies slower to recognize threats, and that causes me concern that we may get deputies hurt. Number 3, higher exposure to violence. This increased workload, deputies are not proactive, as the undersheriff said, we're totally reactive. When deputies are stretched thin, the proactive policing like community engagement, traffic, prevention, any of that, it drops or even stops, leaving them mostly responding to emergency calls. And then lastly, the psychological safety. I've seen it being out on patrol for about a month that there's almost this little bit of constant isolation where all the staff, they're so short, they're feeling unsupported by the county, and that's affecting morale. And that morale is reducing some of that trust, maybe that cohesion that we need to keep going. I'm totally impressed with every person, commission, non-commission. They're doing great work, doing excellent work with little resources, and they all need to be commended. Just to correct the undersheriff, one little piece when he said that there's 53 deputies that are currently working. We also have 11 on protected leave, so we're currently functioning with 42 deputies out on the road. The other night I went out at 2 in the morning. There's only one central car working in the central area of Kitsap County. Just blew my mind that we had 4 deputies covering the whole county. Speaking with Sergeant Toomey and doing some work with him, the other thing to bring up is we currently just had 112 current leave requests denied to keep staffing at minimum staffing levels, so we're denying people their time off. We cannot continue to deliver the services that the county expects and the citizens expect. With that, I'm going to introduce Sergeant Dan Toomey, one of our administrative sergeants, to talk a little bit as well, and after him will be followed by Deputy Justin Coronado.
Works. Set a timer to keep it short. Commissioners, Budget Committee members, thank you for your time today. Apparently, everybody in the panel here today was looking over my shoulder as I was making my notes. Everything's been touched on, but I just want to give you an idea of what a day looks like for me, and the chief asked me to kind of touch on that. So I've been with the Sheriff's Office I'm in my 20th year here with the Sheriff's Office, my 28th year of policing. I started this job in the late 90s as a reserve with the City of Fife. Worked provisional with them for a while and then went into full-time law enforcement in the early 2000s. And what I'm seeing today, like the undersheriff said earlier, is unprecedented. When I applied for my very first police job in 1997, there were 900 people that applied for 4 positions. And today we can't get people even through a background check. We're trying to hand people jobs, and it's changed dramatically in a way that I never thought was possible. I'm a sergeant here with the Sheriff's Office in the Patrol Division. I've held that position for 10 years. My current role is an administrative sergeant, which means I sit at a desk every day and I look at thousands and thousands of little boxes to keep our road staff and keep our deputies safe and keep our citizens safe, and try and keep these numbers moved around and deputies on the road so that they can respond to calls and do their job. And that job every day is it's a nightmare every day that I come in. We have a minimum staffing that floats throughout a 24-hour period. Overnight, our minimum staffing is 6 because that's what our call volume demands. During the day, that minimum staffing moves to 10 because that's what our call volume demands. I come in on a daily basis, and that call volume it's in the red. Every single day we're under. Chief Birkenfeld mentioned he came in the other morning and our staffing was at 4 that particular morning. That's not anecdotal. That is a regular occurrence for us on a weekly basis where we have shifts. The sheriff talked about the fact that the calls that we go to require not only more time because of de-escalation and the things we're required to do, but they require more people. The crimes I've seen since COVID has ended have risen dramatically as far as violence goes. The number of violent calls that we go to involving weapons has risen dramatically. You can put statistics on paper. They don't paint a picture of what we actually do. When we have a violent call that happens in the middle of the night, which is where we see most of our crimes of violence, it will literally take every single deputy that we have working in the entire county, which sometimes is only 4, and it moves them to that call. If you live in Seebeck, if you live in Hansville, if you live in Olalla, the response time, if you make a 911 call in the middle of the night, it's going to be very extended. And all of the deputies working in the entire county are probably at a single call. And it's scary. Our minimum staffing should be 6. It should be 2 in the south, 2 in the central, 2 in the north in the middle of the night, and we struggle to maintain that. When we talk about overtime, we've heard some deputies or some officers talk about mandatory overtime. We used to pride ourselves as an agency of being an agency that never mandated a deputy, at least out in the patrol division. There are other agencies locally that were doing that, and we were a destination agency. We're an agency that nobody ever left. We were an agency where we didn't struggle with staffing issues as far as staying fully staffed. Today, I struggle to maintain that minimum staffing because I have mandated so many employees that I don't have any employees left to mandate. I can only mandate them so many times a week. There's a maximum number of hours that they can work in a 24-hour period, and when I max them out, it's like a relief pitcher in a baseball game, right? I can only use that pitcher so many days in a row before he needs a day of rest. It's the same thing with the deputies. We just run out of people. The other thing that we're dealing with and that we're facing is just a generational change with deputies. We used to, when I started in this job, we would have deputies who would stand in line to sign up for overtime. And now I can't give it away. We have deputies now who they actually stand in line to get time off. It's more valuable to them with this newer generation to be at home and be with their families than it is for them to be at work. And it makes our jobs really difficult. It makes it very dangerous out on the road. It's dangerous for the deputies who are working. And it's scary. It's scary to leave those shifts short. The job that I do requires a lot of what I like to call massaging the schedule. So when I can't fill the overtime, we have a program that we put overtime out in advance. And when I can't fill it there, we have a text messaging service that we use to try and get somebody to come in at the last minute. And when that doesn't work, then I'm taking deputies from other specialty positions that should be doing other things to cover the road. An example, this morning I took one of our community resource officers who's responsible for addressing homelessness. It's one of his biggest jobs. And I brought him in at 3:30 this morning. He's not supposed to start till 7:30. I brought him in at 3:30 and I made him work till 11:30 covering the central area of the county, just handling patrol calls, which means he's not available to handle the homelessness issue, which is the biggest piece of his job to go deal with. So we're taking those people away from the positions that we want them addressing, whether it's community resource, whether it's mental health positions, whether it's our traffic enforcement officers who are constantly covering areas, we're taking them away. Quickly before my time ends, right on time there. It's just as I was going to say before, as an example, for a 30-day period between the middle of August and the middle of September, I advertised over 750 hours of overtime hours that were available to cover shifts, 750 hours of overtime that we needed covered, and I filled 57% of those, and that was with the advanced system that we used. That was the last minute request to put out overtime, and we were left with 43% of those hours unfilled, which is the number of hours, the number of time that we had that we just ran short because we didn't have a choice. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sergeant Toomey.
Hello, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. Just to kind of give you guys an idea of what my day looks like, I work the swing shift for the Sheriff's Office. So I work...
What's your name?
Deputy Justin Coronado. So I work from the 1300 to 2340, so almost midnight. For the last about month, it has been until almost 4 a.m. I work. So I work almost consistently 14-ish hours a day, as well as others do. I'm not the only one. We're always constantly trying to fill that extra gap, as Sergeant Toomey spoke about. And the issue being is, as they spoke about, it's not anecdotal to have us four on at a time. The issue being is that we're filling that 4-hour slot because we don't want to leave our coworkers without help, because then they might not make it home to their loved ones, right? So we are constantly trying to suck up time at our house so that our coworkers are making it home safely to their house. I went to a call recently where there was not enough deputies. We had to call Bremerton for help. We were massively outnumbered. It became a mob of people we couldn't control. And as terrifying as that is, we as law enforcement could not control the scene because of lack of deputies. This is a constant issue for us that we're running into, where we're asking for other agencies to help us. And luckily, those other agencies are always willing, but there's times when they're not able to because they have their own high priority calls to deal with. And unfortunately, we're not their priority because we don't have to be their priority. They have to prioritize their own agencies. But we're lucky that we do have supporting agencies to help us. We run into these issues on a constant basis where we're massively understaffed. And I can say, when Chief Birkenfeld came in the other night, and there was one deputy, I was on my way home, and I just physically can't stay anymore because, like Sergeant Toomey said, I run out of hours. And other deputies, we run out of hours where we're not able to stay anymore, and we can't help anymore. Even though we want to help, we can't. It's not allowed. If we continue to go on this trajectory, the common theme here is burnout, right? Burnout. As soon as you run out of the guys that are willing to pick up the overtime, you're not going to have any deputies. We're not going to respond to your domestic violence anymore. We're not going to respond to your violent situation because we're not able to. We're looking at these calls now. I can't go to that. I can't go by myself. It's not safe. We're not allowed to respond to DVs by ourselves. Where we're in situations now where we're not going to respond because we don't have the deputy to respond to your house. So if your loved one is in a violent situation, we don't have a deputy. Sergeant Toomey said it might be a delayed response. There's a good chance of that. A good chance of it being 20, 30, 40 minutes where a deputy will not respond because we just don't have the body to come to your house. This is a normal, everyday thought process for deputies on the road for us. I train new deputies. I'm on the SWAT team. I do a lot of ancillary duties. And I will say, training the new deputies, it's very difficult to say, yes, we're going to do our best to make sure you're not burnt out. That's not the case. We can't. There's a good chance we're going to burn you out just because of our staffing levels. Our staffing levels are at a crisis low, absolutely horrific, where our morale is just dropped. I've never seen so many deputies looking at other agencies so quickly. You get 1 to 2 year deputies and they're like, yeah, I'm out of here. This other agency's better. I talked to my academy buddy. The grass is greener on the other side. The grass is greener, which ultimately just means we have a revolving door of bodies. It's a constant revolving door of bodies where we're training new people, which as a field training officer, I will tell you, burns me out to the point where I don't want to train anybody. And, that's a constant issue for field training. They got a bunch of new field training officers, but it's only a matter of time when you're constantly training people. And if you don't have the senior most experienced officers training, then you have inexperienced officers training. And you guys are not, the citizens of Kitsap County will not be getting the adequate officers that we hopefully can provide now. That's just an idea of what the things that we go through and the safety we look at and trying to make sure that we all try to go home. And I know that trying to make sure we go home to see our kids and our wives or our husbands or our spouse, whatever it may be. And if this continues on the trajectory, that may not happen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Deputy Coronado. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Gundrum now.
Yes, Sheriff, we only have about 15 minutes left, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of room for questions, but I just wanted you all to be aware of the timing constraint.
Sure, and I'm sorry I kind of published that as a 45-minute, but if you would bear with us, and I'm sure if the
we'll bear with you. I
Okay.
just wanted you to know that there's.
Yeah, been watching. So, but I know that if the prosecutor is behind me, he would yield time to us, so.
Our challenge is we're gonna lose members of this group towards the end of the day.
Lisa Gundrum, I'm the Chief of Detectives and Support Services, and I had planned on discussing both the support services and the detective portion, but because of we're running out of time, I'll let you just look at the numbers. However, I did notice some discrepancies on the detective side, which is the left side, that I do want to cover. So just so that you understand, the detective division handles felony cases. Our cases are, and it's not all felonies, but we're really focusing on the homicides, the sexual assaults of children, child pornography, assaults. We handle the domestic violence when it also leads to strangulation, which we're noticing an increase of. And we have to handle those as well as the original patrol deputy response. But in the slide there, it says that cases assigned were 445, but the actual number of cases both assigned to detectives and written were 677. That is 677 felony cases that were assigned, and that could involve multiple detectives. In 2024, we had 12 detective positions and 1 federal partner assigned to our office. The federal partner did not handle a county caseload, but just provided manpower when we needed it. But out of the 3 detective positions last year, 3 of them were unfilled because of reassignment or long-term medical leave. So we also had 1 detective who was part-time. He split his duties, part-time sex offender coordinator and then a part-time caseload. So in essence, we had 8.5 detectives managing 677 cases, and that averages out to about 80 cases per detective for the year. We also handled, and you heard earlier about how they labeled the assaults, the APS and CPS assaults. They were under the assault category at one time. Now they just come in as APS or CPS referrals. There were 610 of those. I think on the next slide it'll say 689. But 610 that need, each and every one of those need to be investigated. Some of those go to detectives while others go to patrol to be investigated. In total, our detectives and our support staff handled 1,287 reports. In addition to the cases that the detectives work, they're also, as deputies, are responsible for checking on the sex offenders that are assigned to them twice a year. And each detective is responsible to respond to any IIT, the independent investigation, if we have a deadly use of force that doesn't result in a fatality. Our detectives need to respond to that too. So any response, any assistance are not indicated in those numbers. Just challenges. As you can see, the caseload per detective would be difficult to manage even if all 12 positions were filled. Every technology-based contract we rely on daily has seen a cost increase. Unfortunately, in order to meet the required budget cuts, we had to cancel a main contract, which is Leads Online, which had been an important tool for both patrol and detectives that helped us with theft and burglary investigations, and we had to cut that. I'm sure you're also aware of the conditions of the building that the detectives work in. It's located directly beneath the jail, and for 2 years in a row, we have had raw sewage entering our workplace. While repairs have been made, water leaks still persist. E. coli and asbestos were found and removed, but the work areas were left unfinished. The space has no windows for natural light or fresh air, and the air circulation is poor at best. Despite the challenges, detectives are eager to proactively investigate cases such as drugs and human trafficking. However, the complex and time-intensive cases require significant resources, and unfortunately, with limited staffing and growing caseloads, those cases are not being worked, even though we know that both drugs and human trafficking are an increasing concern in Kitsap County. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sergeant Myers.
All right, I'll try to talk quickly here. Thank you to the commission, everybody, for having us here today. My name is Brandon Myers. I'm the detective sergeant with the Sheriff's Office. I started my law enforcement career at age 17. I just hit over the 40 mark here in Kitsap County because I love it so much. And the reason I'm here talking today is because I can honestly say in the entire time I've been with the Sheriff's Office, we are at mission critical mode right now. And unfortunately, we have seen over the years doing more with less and less and less, and we're at the breaking point. I wanted to highlight some of the stuff, and I'll kind of skip through it quickly just because the chief talked about some of that, what a detective actually does. So a detective is a very specialized skill within law enforcement. And as the chief explained, we're primarily working felony cases. With that, though, comes a lot of additional training. And so when we talked about turnover throughout the last couple of years, we almost have a completely new detective division within the last couple of years. Getting them into training, getting them into all the requirements has been a awesome task to try to accomplish. Our average number of detectives, while we mentioned that we're supposed to have 12, 8.5 is about the average, the reality is about 6 is what we deal with on a given day, just because of trainings or leaves or medical conditions that are plaguing the area. This is very problematic when, as of this last week, we have 90 active felony cases in Kitsap County, and I'm dividing it amongst 6 detectives. And a majority of the cases that we get are those very, very severe felonies. And the reality of it is, like the leads online going away, we're at a position now that property crimes are a thing of the past for us to investigate because we just can't. Especially having these tools taken away from us, it's the one thing we have that we can potentially tackle it, but it has to go away because it's part of the budget cuts. You know, in addition to all the cases that we do, some of the most impactful cases comes from a program called ICAC, which is the Internet Crimes Against Children. This is a regional and nationwide program that deals with child pornography and some of the worst instances that you could ever imagine a child being put through. Unfortunately, these are also increasing, and these also get assigned to us here in Kitsap County. The number of cases that we have currently in ICAC world is about 20, and that's, again, divided up amongst 6 detectives. These cases involve sexual assaults and abuse of children that we have to watch videos of that occurring to develop probable cause to arrest these blatantly monsters that are in our community. What's the scary part is with such little detectives working these types of cases, you're getting the overexposure. And going back to our theme here, this overexposure is taking a mental toll on a lot of our members. You can only watch so much of the most evil of human and not have it affect you. We've been trying to do outreach with mental health in as much as we can. However, with additional cuts, it leaves us just hamstrung to a degree. With the patrol division suffering with the shortages that they have, we in turn also have to suffer because of the fact we cannot justify taking detectives, into detectives and leaving the patrol world short. And most of our detectives have actually worked to help backfill patrol just because it has been such a dire strait. The other thing that I think is really important to capture right now is the big ticket items in our county, outside of the homicides that we're investigating, child sex crimes, involves drugs, involves guns, and involves human trafficking. This has been increasing over the last couple of years to a proportion I've never seen in our community before. It's scary, and I'll tell you right now, we're not investigating those. We don't have the resources or the people to work those cases. Another point to that is, since we're a Navy town, I'll use this analogy, we're a general detective group, which means we work the main general cases. So picture us as like an aircraft carrier. And so we're out there, but now all of a sudden drugs, guns, and human trafficking are submarine. You can't just take the people on the aircraft carrier and stick them in a submarine and go. There's a lot of specialized training. Can it be done? Absolutely. We can teach you. But we don't have anyone right now that has that skill set. We're trying to balance it as much as we can, but this increase in violent crime that we're seeing has a direct correlation to those specific types of crimes that absolutely need investigating that we just don't have the resources for. I'll end with this because I know we're short on time. Again, I was born and raised in this community. I love this area. I love our sheriff's office. I think that we do as much that we can, but I want to speak on behalf of the rest of the men and women here when I say we need help and we are taxed, we are stressed, and every year it's been doing more with less. And it's going to get one of us hurt. It's going to get somebody burned out to the point that they leave this profession, and that's not what we need in our community. And I believe I understand our ability to make money appear is challenging, but I would highly encourage we need to work together to figure out a way to get some sort of revenue stream that can help minimize this disaster as the future comes up, because it's not going to go away anytime soon. And until we find additional revenue to tackle this, I'm afraid it's just going to get worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant. I'll turn it back over to the sheriff.
Thank you for indulging us through all that, but I'll turn it over with questions without further comment.
Sure, I want to just say it wasn't an indulgence, we were looking for that, so thank you for all the presentations. My comment was to make sure everybody was aware that we were cutting close. I wanted to make sure that, Chief Gundrum, you had the time you needed, because my intention wasn't to cut you off.
That's okay.
You're good?
I'm okay. Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you all for your presentations. And we have a few minutes for questions or comments. Commissioner Root? Wait, before we comment, were you going to comment? I want to start with questions, like technical questions about the budget.
I do have
Okay.
a couple of questions. Hi, I'm Steve Nolan. I'm a citizen. I've been fortunate to work with law enforcement a fair amount in my career. You mentioned, I believe it was the sheriff and Wendy, your contracts and your contract obligations that you have. My assumption is that you sell beds on a contractual basis to probably state and cities and out of the jail. And you probably have obligations that you provide services on contracts of other kinds. Have you been able to look at those contractual agreements and see what's going to be needed in order to be able to bring in the revenue that justifies the increased level of service for healthcare and just for housing, for food? You mentioned all of those things, stressing your budgets. Are you factoring those in this year and in future years?
Thank you for your question. Yes, for our inmates in the jail, it has not been proposed to the cities that contract with us, but we estimated an increase of $10 per inmate per day, which is roughly $363,000 of additional revenue, which will barely put a dent in the increased medical costs. But we have looked at that. As far as other contracts, we have SRO contracts with the school districts that help to offset 80% of those deputy costs. We have 5 SRO contracts. We also contract with the Kitsap County Fair Board to help cover some of our deputy costs, but for other community events, that is not being covered, so we're sending staff out there, and we do not currently have contracts in place to cover those costs. Did that answer your question?
And are there discussions about re-engaging in those kinds of contract negotiations, or renegotiating any of those contracts so you can deal with this bow wave that I'm assuming that you're dealing with going out into the future?
In some cases, I think it's almost the opposite. Like Penny kind of spoke to our jail medical. There's only one person or one company that even submitted a proposal. So, and food service was the same. So some of these big costs to us, we're kind of painted into a corner because there's just not a lot of options out there right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to follow up on this, though, like how much can we count on any of these contractual increases? How far away are they from being implemented? When would you send a letter out to the cities, for example, for the jail bed increases? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, we try to get it out about now because everybody's going through their budget process. So we've gone through the calculation stage, and now it's just a matter of coming to the agreement and sending those out and letting the cities know.
Okay.
And they're based on an annual basis. We've been reviewing those rates.
And Chris, can we get from you, but I guess maybe it's a Toby question. Can we get the 911 increased cost breakout? I can't remember if we asked for that yesterday, but so we can see from 911 the 23, 24, 25, 26 projection spending and then the projected increase. Okay. And then I have a question for you all. Russ, you hit on it a little bit. Can you just check in with us on the number of FTEs that are out across the agency on, you call it protected leave. I'm not totally sure what that means. Can you talk a little bit to that?
The FMLA stuff.
So it's FMLA?
Yeah, PFMLA too. Last time I had checked, which was probably 3 weeks ago. We had 9 on patrol that were out, and
We currently have 15 that are approved for either FMLA or PFML.
15?
Some of that is like PFML for babies, and FMLA, intermittent leave. People can take days off, 3, 4 per episode, so that's where we see the impacts when someone calls off on protected leave.
Okay, so that's 2 dozen, 9 plus 15.
And we also have 2 or 3 deputies that are injured that are off long-term, and then we have 2 other ones that were involved in critical incidents that are on administrative leave probably until the end of the year at least, would be the soonest they would come back.
So just doing the math, so is the 9 on patrol inclusive of the 2 and the 2? So it's 9
It'd be about
plus 2.
13 or 14.
13 or 14 on
Yeah.
patrol, and then 15 in corrections.
2 in detectives.
Oh, yeah, we
And
have,
2, plus 2 in
2 in
detectives.
detectives.
Okay, and then just to, all right, I'm doing the math. Tell me if this is right. 9 plus 15 is 24, plus 2 who are injured, 2 who are critical, on critical incidents, and 2 detectives. So that's 30 people are out on protected leave. And that's part of the overtime crisis right now, right? Okay.
correct.
So just to be
But even when they come back, there's still gonna be overtime, it just wouldn't be
back
as,
to more normal overtime, maybe. Do you know
Possibly.
for the protected leave, and I'm assuming you'll tell us what you can share because it's all private, but for the protected leave, do you know, like, when 2 are coming back? You know, like, do you have timelines where you know where they're coming back roughly, like, after having a baby or?
I know on some of those, Commissioner, we can't really ask, but when you get their APF from risk, it will list kind of projected timeline. I found in my experiences, that's usually extended several times. Working with HR, there's 2 individuals I know prior to me leaving detectives and moving to patrol that had protected leave for 1 year. And that's coming up, I believe, in December. There's others where it's been shortened, and some of those have turned to ADA exceptions that we have to abide by with federal law.
Okay, and then there are an additional 16 non-administrative job openings. So there's 9 deputies right now and 7 corrections officers. Does that sound roughly right? That's as of 9/11.
I think,
Openings, like job openings,
I think
vacancies.
talking with OPS this morning when I stopped by, corrections, I believe is down to 3. And I
good.
believe we're at currently 8 on the commission side.
Of job openings.
Correct.
Okay. Other questions? Commissioner Root?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a robust brief. I'm sitting here feeling it. Trust me, everyone in the back, I looked at everybody's faces, and I feel you, I see you. Okay, understand that, please. I think we all do. As you know, budget is budget, money is money. And I'm going to get to a question here, Sheriff, that I want to ask, and it's going to be, it's probably going to be the right time to ask that question, but I'm going to hold that for a second. Obviously, you have to be at your best at the citizen's worst every single time, every single day, and you can't do that when you're running on fumes. You're running on that last piece of yarn on the sweater. You can't do that. Mental health is huge, and for a couple of us that talked about that already, you know that's important to me personally, and I recognize that. So I want you to know you're being heard by the whole board, by the whole board of the whole office understands this. You have in your first slide, it's listed out perfectly, Sheriff, is staffing, morale, culture, recruiting, and retention. That is perfectly in line, in order, the way it goes, and that just starts deteriorating, and you've briefed it all today. So that hit me hard, and I see that. I want to note Thurston County went through the staffing issue. I probably bet you know better than I do. I just read something this morning, as a matter of fact, and it was incredible to see what they were dealing with is where we're going. It looks like we're going down that path, and it's taken 4 years for them just to get back up to normal staffing to start meeting the demand of their county. And that is a great example of where we're probably at, and you've said it already, Sheriff, that's where you're at, and we have other counties to look at. Their I don't want to call them mistakes, but they're challenges that they had and maybe wasn't addressed in time, and it took twice as long, twice as much money to get them back up to staffing. So I guess my question is, Sheriff, I know that we're looking, have you looked at a levy lift? And if you have, what is your position on that right now for the citizens of Kitsap County?
When you say levy lit, are you just talking specifically about a property levy lit or sales tax?
I'm talking about justice. So we have the option with the new legislation from the governor, a council member at 1% increase in taxes to help your staff, help law and justice. I'm talking about a vote from the people to bring it up to that 0.3% to ensure that we have you, maybe not covered completely, but we can help out and make sure our citizens are safe.
I think absolutely that would be the best route for us to try and go. You know, Thurston County did do it was a 0.3% increase. And when you do a tax like that, 40% goes to the cities within the county jurisdiction. So to pass something like that, you have to have the cities on board. But I mean, numbers I had most recently was that would create about $12 million into the county portion to help cover some of the costs. Thurston County, when they did theirs, they were very deliberate, and the vast majority went to the sheriff's office. That's why they were able to add 50 deputies. That's how they were able to get a building. Some of the money did go to the prosecutor's office and public defense. I think that what I would like to see, I mean, I've lobbied every time I've talked and done a presentation, is it seems to be the only solution. Otherwise, we watch us deteriorate, watch us not keep up with the services that our community really expects. Part of the reason I brought all these people to me today with me was not just to explain to you what's going on, but I'm hoping some of our citizens actually do watch this.
Absolutely.
Because I think if they heard it, they would understand some of the complexities. And I've been around 35 years. This is the worst I've ever seen. And, you know, it may get better to some degree, but there are those avenues available to us. Most counties have already passed some sort of sales tax, or some are taking advantage of the new councilmatic tax that you could pass under 2015. So it's a proven track record for us. My challenge to you would be, you know, as leaders, I think we should stand up to say something needs to be done to get us back on course. It's up to the citizens to decide, but I am convinced that if we take to them the issues we're dealing with and what they would expect from us, I think it's a reasonable approach. And I feel confident when I watch fire levies pass, school levies pass, library levies pass. People are probably willing to pay a little bit more for public service and criminal justice. And I think that that's the avenue we should go in. As leaders, we should try to go that way together. I think the challenge is what you may run into, and this is something I'm fearful of, is I think the money that you try to raise should go to, you know, fix the structural problems you have in providing county services right now. Because what can happen is everybody and anybody with a program will come to you and say, well, let's include this, let's include that. And then all of a sudden it'll be like your mid-tax, where you have $8 million worth of requests and $4 million to give out. I think that, you know, if we can do a 3/10, which would require the cities to sign off, I believe, I would say that would be the way to go. If we don't, then, you know, I mean, a 1/10, which could be councilmatic, just a vote of the council is a possibility. Or we could do it as a vote of the people, or a property levy lid. Now, I'm not as experienced in property levy lid increase, but I mean, that is another option. But I do not have the expertise to say whether that would be the best option at this point or not.
Okay, because I think that's where we're at. As much as I do not want to do that, you're convincing. It's absolutely needed, it's required, and I think you're right, Sheriff, I think the people are ready for public safety is ready for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I just make a comment. I was going to speak about this myself because it seems to me, and I started working with law enforcement in the mid-90s in a big county across the water from here. And I had an opportunity to work in several cities with law enforcement. And the issues that you are facing are dramatic, dire, and I believe every word of it. It's very difficult to get citizens to vote for tax increases for anything special. But I believe that you're in a position now, if you, Sheriff, and others within the agencies that would stand to benefit from this would go out and lead, that there's a possibility that the citizens would back this. And I think that putting together a strong citizens advocacy group as part of that is going to be key to it. I appreciated your presentation, and I think it's undeniable that you need resources to do your job adequately and protect your employees and the citizens as well.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for the comments. And thank you all for your presentation. We're going to give you a couple minutes to clear the room. Chad Enright, the prosecutor, is coming up. He overheard part of the last of that. I know Chad's probably rewriting his opening remarks. But Sheriff, if you'd like to stay for that, whoever wants to stay is welcome.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you very much for your time and your attention, and I appreciate all the support and comments.